Hello everyone, welcome to Military Schedule. Today, we delve into the powerful and heart-wrenching stories of bravery and ultimate sacrifice in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. These are the untold tales of soldiers who, in the face of unimaginable adversity, displayed extraordinary courage and made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. Join us as we uncover the personal struggles, the heroic acts, and the profound impact of their bravery on the battlefield. These stories are a testament to the human spirit and the relentless pursuit of freedom. Stay with us until the end to honor these heroes and understand the true cost of war. Your journey through their stories begins now. Danne Partridge was the youngest of 5 children, and his father was a member of the United States Air Force. He enlisted in the United States Army in 2006 and served in Baghdad from 2007 to 2009 before leaving the Army in 2012. He was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and said that it was very difficult for him to integrate into civilian life. The former U.S. Army infantryman said he felt spiritually called to volunteer in the Ukraine war. He flew to Poland with a one-way ticket in April 2022, with his backpack filled with bulletproof vests, a helmet, and tactical gear. He arrived at the American embassy and took a bus to the border. Danne Partridge joined the International Legion and served in a unit that included volunteers from other countries. He was a Humvee driver, and during training he was told that if he tried to save himself, his men would likely be killed. But if he saved his men, he would likely be killed. This deeply marked him. On October 3, 2022, his unit was in Severodonetsk, a city in the Luhansk region, when they were ambushed by 2 Russian combat vehicles, at which point he was severely hit in the head by shrapnel. The unit had no stretchers and was still under attack, but the soldiers carried the American serviceman in a blanket and evacuated him and other wounded in a truck. Danne Partridge was in a coma with life support for 8 days and died on October 11, 2022, due to the injuries sustained. He was 34 years old and left behind 5 young children. Zabielski was a veteran who served in the Persian Gulf War with the 101st Airborne Division of the U.S. Army. After leaving the Army, he worked in construction for over 30 years. Zabielski was born in New York but lived in Florida, and in his leisure time he enjoyed hunting, fishing, and riding his Harley. When the war in Ukraine began, he decided to help and joined the multinational combat squad known as the Wolverines, which was made up of 13 English-speaking foreign combatants. On May 15, 2022, Zabielski and one of his comrades were on a mission to clear landmines in the village of Dorozhnyank in the Zaporizhia Oblast before a planned Ukrainian offensive, when he accidentally triggered a wire hidden in the dense vegetation under foggy conditions. Zabielski died instantly from the explosion, and his companion was severely injured. He was 52 years old, married, had 5 children, and 1 grandchild. Dudnik began fighting the Russians in 2014 when Russia took Crimea. He was still practically a teenager at 18 years old and spent almost his entire adult life at war. Dudnik joined the Ukrainian Armed Forces after school and served for 5 years in the Airborne Brigade. After that, he worked for a while in the military commissariat and then experienced a bit of civilian life. Currently, Dudnik is on the front lines near the occupied city of Bakhmut. He had a close brush with death in 2022 during a Russian missile attack, being wounded by shrapnel. On March 15, 2023, Dudnik shot down a Russian Su-24 aircraft in the direction of Bakhmut. The precise shot was fired from the Igla-1 man pads. He noticed the moment the enemy aircraft made a maneuver and slowed down to turn. Despite suffering from heart problems and back pain, Dudnik is in Bakhmut, fighting with the 93rd Separate Mechanized Brigade, Kholodny Yar. After Ukraine's victory, he wants to start his own business and travel with his family. Demitro Fiala was born in Lviv, Ukraine, and has loved soccer since he was a child. At the age of 15, he moved to Israel as part of a repatriation program. There, he completed his education, served in the Israeli army, and obtained Israeli citizenship. In 2006, Demitro fought for Israel in the war against Lebanese Hezbollah. He operated the Spike anti-tank system. After his military service, he became a soccer coach at the youth academy of the Israeli club Maccabi Be'er Sheva. In 2015, Demitro went back to Ukraine to take care of his sick Ukrainian grandmother, leaving his mother and brother in Israel. He was supposed to return after a while, but then he met his wife Yeva and decided to stay in Ukraine. In Ukraine, he also coached the team FC Dynamo Lviv, in the city of Lviv in the western part of the country. He took a training course in Donetsk to obtain a UEFA coaching license, but as the course was about to end, war broke out. With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Demitro Fiala enlisted in the Ukrainian army and was among the first volunteers to defend Ukraine at the start of the war. On September 1st, 2022, Demitro Fiala was killed by Russian troops in the city of Bakhmut. His body was held by the Russians and was returned through a prisoner exchange. He was 39 years old and left behind a wife and 2 children. Seth Patrick Bryan was a former U.S. Marine who loved animals. When Seth was on leave, he spent his time volunteering at youth basketball camps and being with his family, siblings, and friends. He also had an appreciation for architecture and enjoyed drawing. He loved being outdoors and never missed an opportunity to spend a day at his family's farm, where he would fish, ride ATVs, and walk through the woods. Seth Patrick Bryan decided to fight in the Ukraine War, arriving in the summer of 2022 and served twice in the International Legion. He fought in multiple campaigns to reclaim territory in Kharkiv and Bakhmut. In Bakhmut, he was wounded by shrapnel from a grenade and suffered a concussion that took him out of combat. After recovering from his injuries, Seth Patrick Bryan returned to his unit and embarked on a mission near the Dnipro River. On December 4th, 2023, he was killed by the Russian army near Zaporizhia on the Dnipro River mission. He was 20 years old. Lucen was born and raised in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and attended school there until the 9th grade. His parents, Kathy and George, who live in North Carolina, said that Luke heard stories of Ukrainian refugees arriving in Poland in need of supplies, which is why he wanted to help and set off for Ukraine. They tried to dissuade him from the idea, but by that time he was already in Poland on his way to the Ukrainian border. Luke's grandparents are from Ukraine, so it wasn't a big surprise to his parents that he wanted to go. They said that Luke was always willing to help those in need. With no military experience, Lucen trained for a few weeks in April 2022 to serve as a volunteer medic, always keeping in touch with his family. That's when he managed to join the International Legion and began fighting in the Donetsk region. On July 19, 2022, Lucen's unit was ambushed by Russian troops in the Donetsk region. Lucen was severely injured and 3 of his comrades tried to rescue him, but a Russian tank appeared and eliminated all of them. An American compatriot, a Canadian, and a Swede died in the attack. Lucen was 31 years old and left behind 2 children. Trent Davis enlisted in the U.S. Army when he was 17 years old, where he served as a chemical operations specialist at Fort Riley, Kansas. He ended his service contract as a soldier, having never been on a mission, which left him feeling frustrated. When the war in Ukraine began, Trent Davis decided to travel to Ukraine out of a sense of duty, eager to help the Ukrainians repel the Russian invasion. Davis's first unit was the Georgian Legion, which refused to place him in a combat position due to his lack of practical experience. In this unit, he served as a trainer for civilians and new recruits away from the front lines. However, this was not the kind of work he had come to do in Ukraine. He wanted to fight on the front lines. That's when Trent Davis found out that the International Legion could give him that opportunity. He joined the International Legion, and on his first mission, on November 8, 2022, Trent Davis was killed during an operation in the country's southern front near the city of Kherson. He was 21 years old. Christian Camilo Marquez was a Colombian with no prior military training. He had only served in the Colombian National Police as an aide, not as a soldier as he originally intended. Christian dreamt of being a soldier, and since childhood, he expressed his desire to join a military force in Colombia. Although he wanted to serve in the army, his mother told him not to, as at that time the Colombian government was fighting various guerrillas within the country. When the war in Ukraine began, he decided to join the International Legion to protect Ukraine's sovereignty. He had one firm belief: Russia was doing something wrong. Christian sold his most prized possession, his Yamaha motorcycle, to pay for his trip to Poland. He received 2 weeks of instruction and basic training alongside other foreigners and Ukrainians living abroad. He became an expert in repelling Russian tanks, equipped with several rocket launchers for this purpose. Christian Camilo Marquez was in combat in the area of Izium, a city in the east of Ukraine, in the Kharkiv Oblast. That day, his unit was in a trench when they saw two Russian tanks approaching. Christian left the trench and destroyed one of the tanks, but was hit by a bullet in the head and fell lifeless. He was 32 years old, unmarried, and had no children. Oscar Alexander Koksvik Johansson was a young man with a selfless heart in the right place. Oscar served in the Danish army, completing his military service in 2016. In 2017, at the age of 19, he attempted to travel to Syria to assist the Kurds in their fight against terrorism, motivated by a Kurdish friend. However, the Nordjylland police received several reports that Oscar Johansson had plans to travel to Iraq and then to Syria to join the Kurdish militia YPG. The police went to his home and confiscated his passport, as well as issued a one-year travel ban for Oscar. But Oscar Johansson had already decided to become a freedom fighter and help people around the world. When the war began, he managed to reach Ukraine in March 2022, and this was his first experience in a war zone. Oscar was a devout Catholic and served as a combat medic. He evacuated the injured, helped families escape from dangerous regions, and provided essential supplies, including food and much more. Oscar Johansson was killed by Russian troops while teaching combat medicine to Ukrainian soldiers. He also acted as a field priest and never received money for his volunteer service. Edward Wilton III grew up in Florida in Orange Park, but his loved ones are from Ukraine. His grandmother, who is of Ukrainian descent, was raised in the United States and passed down traditions to the family. He served in the U.S. Army and had previously worked at Fort Benning in Georgia. Edward had a military mindset from birth. When the war in Ukraine started, he followed his passion and enlisted in the International Legion to fight the Russian invaders. He wanted to defend the heritage of his ancestors and said, "These are my ancestors. This is the land of my ancestors." Several family members tried to dissuade him and were angry with him, but Edward saw this as his passion and his dream and was happy. In Ukraine, Edward Wilton worked with special forces and participated in many battles. On April 7, 2023, Edward Wilton III was struck by a mortar and died while fighting to defend the city of Bakhmut, nicknamed the Meat Grinder. He was 22 years old. Trevor Kelal, originally from Brisbane, Australia, arrived in Ukraine in early 2022 to help defend the country against Russia. He went to Ukraine with no military experience but ended up being an excellent soldier, one of the best. When he arrived in Ukraine, he was rejected by the International Legion of Ukraine due to his lack of experience. After being turned down, many people simply turned around and went home, but Trevor Kelal insisted and managed to join the 49th Select Carpathian Battalion of the Ukrainian Army. The Australian always woke up early, ready to train, and had no intention of going home until the end of the war. Trevor Kelal was a unique guy, always thinking of his wife and daughter living in China. He earned the nickname Ninja because he was a fan of Japanese manga culture and for the skills he acquired as a sniper. The Australian soldier fought in the city of Izium and in Donbass. He was wounded in July 2022 in an ambush by Russian troops, suffering serious injuries, but after recovering, he returned to the front line. In early November 2022, between 20 to 30 Ukrainian fighters were killed or injured in a Russian artillery attack in Donbass. Trevor Kelal, aged 40, was among those killed. Wilmer Martinez Vasquez served in the Colombian army and then studied to become a professional soldier. In 2021, Wilmer decided to travel to Dubai in search of work. There, he secured a job as a security guard for a sheikh. In 2023, he was offered a better income, 3 times what he was making, to join the International Legion in Ukraine, and he did not think twice before accepting. After the Ukrainian withdrawal from the city of Avdiivka and its capture by the Russian army, Wilmer Martinez was close to returning to Colombia, following constant appeals from his mother, who begged him to come home because she feared the escalating intensity of the war in that country could be fatal for her son. Wilmer's plan was to return in May to celebrate Mother's Day with his mother. On February 19, 2024, Wilmer Martinez was resting in a shelter along with 3 other companions, also Colombians, in the Ukrainian city of Kurakov, when all of them were killed following a missile attack by Russia. Wilmer Martinez Vasquez was 28 years old. Roy Eduardo Rojas Espinosa was a member of the Public Force of Costa Rica, where he worked for 12 years. After the war began, it took Roy 1 year to arrange all the paperwork to leave Costa Rica and head to Ukraine. To join the International Legion, it was required to have either military combat experience or law enforcement experience, and Roy Espinosa met the latter requirement. However, the journey was not easy. Roy had to contact several Ukrainian embassies around the world until he got a positive response from the Ukrainian embassy in Poland. Roy Espinosa arrived in Ukraine in October 2022, and by early December, he was stationed in the Kharkiv Oblast. He served in the 92nd Mechanized Division and was sent to the front lines. Before a mission, the commander said, "If you are not willing to die, please do not get on this bus." But Roy said that this had always been his dream, and that for him, nothing was impossible. On August 10, 2023, Roy Espinosa died alongside several European, Latin, and Ukrainian fighters after being hit by a Russian missile attack. He was 38 years old. From a young age, Julio Cesar Sales Soero dreamed of pursuing a military career. He served in the Brazilian army in the state of Amazonas for a year and a half and was discharged when his period of military service ended. But he kept alive his dream of a career in the military. In pursuit of this dream, he decided to travel to France with the aim of joining the French Foreign Legion. Julio Cesar received financial help from his family to try to realize his dream, but he was not accepted. He remained in France, where he found work. When the war started, Julio Cesar learned that Ukraine was accepting volunteers and headed there, even against his family's wishes. Julio Cesar joined the International Legion and served for more than a year. On November 17, 2023, during a mission in the city of Avdiivka, Julio Cesar Sales Soero went to rescue a friend who was lying wounded on the ground when he was directly hit by a Russian missile that made his body disappear. Julio Cesar was 23 years old, with a dream of being a soldier and a war hero, and he managed to realize his dream. Oleksandr Ihorovich Matsievsky was born in Chisinau and lived in Moldova for 28 years before moving to Ukraine. In Ukraine, he worked as an electrician and became a member of the Ukrainian ground forces when the war began. Oleksandr was a 42-year-old soldier who was deployed to Bakhmut in November 2022. Oleksandr and his group of 4 soldiers disappeared on December 30, 2022, following a failed counterattack on the outskirts of Soledar. On March 6, 2023, a 12-second video was released showing an unidentified soldier in a Ukrainian camouflage uniform, unarmed, standing in a shallow trench in a forest, calmly smoking a cigarette. As the man is heard saying "Slava Ukraini," automatic gunfire from several sides is heard and seen shooting at the man who falls. Voices in Russian are heard saying, "Die, bitch." Before the execution, the soldier was reportedly forced to dig his own grave. In the video, he is in a hole with a shovel behind him. Subsequently, Oleksandr Matsievsky was identified as the soldier in the video. On March 12, 2023, the President of Ukraine awarded Matsievsky the title of Hero of Ukraine. In April 2023, a statue of him was unveiled in Nizhin, in the Chernihiv Oblast where he lived. Mio Yavorski was born in 1980, when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, the family got a green card and came to the United States, where they settled in Chicago. Mio Yavorski graduated from Schertz High School and joined the U.S. Army to pay for college. He graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. When the war started, Mio was working in IT, was married, and had a daughter, but he did not hesitate to board a plane bound for Ukraine. Mio joined the Ukrainian Armed Forces as a volunteer in March 2022, and his colleagues called him Chicago. Mio Yavorski was in the fight as Ukraine repelled the initial aggression of Russian forces in 2022. On May 25, 2023, just before Ukraine launched a massive counteroffensive, the position Mio Yavorski was in was bombarded by Russian artillery. Mio and 2 soldiers were wounded, but he managed to pull them to safer positions in the rear. Mio Yavorski decided to return to the front-line positions and assist the rest of his colleagues, but he was killed in combat against Russian troops in the Luhansk Oblast. He was 42 years old. Ethan Hertweck had a strong desire to serve his country since childhood. At the age of 17, he enlisted and began basic training at Camp Pendleton in San Diego. Ethan Hertweck served in the Marine Corps from November 2019 to June 2020, but his dream was cut short after tests revealed a rare blood disease that had never been identified before. He received an honorable discharge, but it was a harsh blow for the man who had wanted to serve since he was a child. He was never happy in civilian life. On his first trip to Ukraine, he helped refugees and trained new recruits, but he wanted to do more. On his second trip to the country, he joined the 59th Brigade, a group of soldiers from various countries, many from the United States. On December 8, 2023, in the city of Avdiivka, Ethan Hertweck and another foreign fighter were protecting two bunkers when the Russians began to invade their position. Both left their post alone, eliminating about 12 enemy soldiers and stopping their advance. Ethan Hertweck managed to reach the bunker, but had to go back to retrieve his wounded colleague, but both were killed. He was 21 years old. Jana Litka, call sign Yara, worked as an IT recruiter for an insurance company and lived in the city of Vinica before the war. When the war in Ukraine began, she volunteered to help both civilians and military personnel. But Jana wanted to do more, so she voluntarily joined the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Jana Litka became a paramedic with the 93rd Brigade Kholodny Yar and worked at the stabilization point in the city of Bakhmut. A stabilization point is a place where the wounded are bandaged and prepared for a longer journey to more specialized medical care. Jana risked her life numerous times on the battlefield to help the wounded, earning her the nickname Angel of the Troops, and she was highly respected among the soldiers. Jana Litka was also known as the Angel of Bakhmut, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without weekends or holidays. On March 3, 2023, near Bakhmut, during an evacuation of wounded Ukrainian soldiers to the stabilization point outside the city, the ambulance Jana was in was attacked and hit by Russian shelling. There were no survivors. She was 29 years old and would have turned 30 on April 2nd. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.